We're back. I'm Brock Davidson for Brock's Performance, and we are continuing on with our ZX-10R project. This is our buddy Mike's 2019. As you can see, it's in plenty of pieces because we are preparing to take Mike's bike to the drag strip and see how fast it can go with Mike riding. What's our goal? Well, we like to be the best, right? If you're going to go to the racetrack, don't go there expecting to go slow. We like going fast. This is the fastest, it's the quickest and fastest stock wheelbase, all bolt-on 1000cc bike that we've ever owned. That's ever been ridden from Brock's Performance. I'm gonna grab my AIM Expo cheat sheet here just to sort of let you see the numbers side by side. Mike Davis did a great job. He's about 200 pounds suited. He ran a 908 at 161, and then we threw Jeremy Teasley on there. Jeremy ran an 886 at 162.8 miles per hour. We don't actually know what Jeremy weighs. I'm going to guess him in the 125-ish range, but substantial difference. But if you notice from the ticket, the mile an hour really wasn't that different. Mike did a great job. Mike's riding well. If you want to be faster than as fast as we can go, this is how fast you have to go. We're going to do all the same things to Mike's bike that we did to Gixzilla. We're going to drop the front end. We're going to add front end lowering straps. When I say drop the front end, one of the things you need to notice is that the ZX-10 has a little different configuration here. If we try to drop these forks, it's going to run right here into the steering damper, so we've got a bracket that's going to fix that. We're going to put in a clutch mod. We're going to lower the bike, put on our lowering links, ceramic bearings from Worldwide Bearings. We're basically going to try to make this bike as close to Gixzilla as we can, given the time we have. Unfortunately, the season's running out. Our tracks are going to close soon, so we have to make it by tomorrow or we're not going to make it at all. So anyway, let's get right down to it. When last we met, Don Gould was here. We had done some testing, some de-restriction testing. We tested it stock. We put our Predator slip-on on the bike, and we got some really good initial results. Now, since then, a whole lot has happened. And just like with Gixzilla, there's a lot of details that went on there, but we're not going to tell you every single thing that made this little bit, that little bit difference. Believe me, it's all the same between the ZX-10 and Gixzilla with some slight differences. So what we're going to focus on are those differences. You know, what made this bike make more power with this setup? We've got some questions that people want answered, so the best thing for us to do there is just go over to the dyno room and we'll show you what we're talking about and we'll show you what the changes were. So follow me. All right, before we get started, I need to explain some things to you, and if you've watched any of our atmospheric conditions videos, you'll know what I mean. We went from summertime to fall here in Ohio, which meant we had hot and humid conditions that turned all the way into absolutely beautiful, amazing Disneyland, high barometric pressure, low humidity conditions. So the runs I'm going to show you, I tried to bunch them together so that they would make some sense. We've got 243 dyno runs on Mike's bike so far. Gixzilla has well over 1,000. Christine has 2,000. So we're not so worried about the runs. These engines are amazing these days. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to it. One of the questions we get asked frequently is the new 2019 ZX-10 actually faster than previous versions? So our other buddy Mike, no confusion there, has a 2016 ZX-10, and we basically set them up identically. The cat delete, the sprint filter, all the the Don's de-restriction flash, and tune them with a power commander. So they're about as close as we know how to get them. So if you come over here and look, the 2016 is the red line, the 2019 is the blue line. You'll notice that the curves are the same, but the 2019 gaps it pretty much everywhere except for in here. I do want to point out this little dip here because we'll be talking about that later, but it looks like, you know, there's 4 or 5 horsepower down low and very similar up top. And we need to point out that the conditions for the 2019 runs were worse than on the 2016 runs. So we would expect them in a side-by-side same-day comparison, we would expect the 2019 to make more power. So as far as we're concerned, it's faster. You can draw your own conclusions if you like. Another question that we get, and this is a big one. Brock, the stock head pipes on the ZX-10R are so good. Do I need a full system? And that's a great question. And we'll get into some detail on that here in a minute. What I'll do I'm gonna go ahead and pull the 2016 run out of there. So this leaves the run that we were on. This is one of our best on pump gas. When we do testing, we try to be as consistent as possible. And using pump gas isn't what we do. We use MR12. It comes from a sealed container. It's very consistent. One of the problems we get with the pump gas is, and I actually ran into this not too long ago, I had an old can of pump gas that we bought in January versus a can of pump gas that we bought in August. The January pump gas made considerably more power. We can't deal with those kind of variables, so we just use MR12. So I'm going to show you the same setup we were just looking at with the cat delete, but on MR12. All right, so you look at this, you see the big gap here, and that MR12 does a crazy job. Up here at the top, we're looking at another 7 horsepower. So we picked up power all along through, but yet again, I want you to look at this dip. Now, once again, for clarity, I'm just going to pull out the pump gas one. We don't care about that. Now, we installed our new pentacarbon full system. It's very similar to the alien head, the CTs. They make as much power as we know how to make. So I'm going to pull that up. Bam! Let me show you some things here. Now, asterisks, these were not in the same weather conditions, but I'm going to show you how we're going to prove this out. If you look, the 2019 made 209 horsepower on MR12. But look at this. Look at our curve. Remember the dip I've been telling you about? From 81 horsepower to 93. And as far as the torque, from 64 up to 74. So you're talking about a 12 horsepower gain, and you're talking about 10 foot-pounds of torque down low, and you get a much smoother, nicer curve all the way up. So, what does that mean? Does a full system, will I go faster with a full system? You will if it's properly designed. And if you want to step over here, I'll show you some of the differences that we're dealing with. All right, we set up a little table here just to show you what we've got. So here's the Kawasaki OEM head pipes. They look like a 4-into-1, but if you look, they're actually split. They're a 4-into-2-into-1, which is our preferred combination. Now, typically, these head pipes are going to be attached to this cat and this muffler. This is giant, right? So the problem that you have, if you mount this on the motorcycle, you're really limited in the distance that you've got between here, where it plugs in here, and where the exhaust ports are. So, add a titanium mid pipe and a really cool muffler, and you've got a very economical, high performance. This is a full system. I mean, it works really, really well. And I want to point that out. Kawasaki engineers did a fantastic job of making a very, very nice head pipe that will also work with the constraints that they're dealing with from an emissions standpoint. Well, this is where full system design comes in. Now, I like telling you guys stuff. I like telling you a lot of stuff, but there's certain things that we simply can't tell you because we consider it a competitive advantage in the exhaust business. But what I will say is we don't have to compensate for this. So if we, and this is our new pentacarbon, good looking, very similar, like I said, to the alien head. But we can make subtle changes. We can make subtle changes in here. We can make changes to the head pipes. We can change the head pipe length, and I've said this before and it blows people away. It blows me away. A 1/2 inch in head pipe length can be worth 5 horsepower. It's huge. So when we look at a stock bike and you see a curve like that, well, there are several places that we can go and address it. And one of the places where we address it is in here. We make modifications in what we call the secondary collector that will remove those dents or holes, dents, holes, whatever you want to call them. That's a hole. 12 horsepower is a hole in your curve. So the combination of all the changes that we make, these systems, these are super light. They're very similar in weight, but the additional acceleration that you would gain, especially down low, which is where 1000s needed, is improved. And then we've also managed to improve upon the top end also. And this ZX-10 is making crazy top end horsepower. So that's just to try and help explain why the curve went from the dip to smoother. Which brings us back over to the dyno here once again. So what I'm going to do, yet again, I'm going to remove the old cat delete file, get rid of that. And I'm going to leave the really nice, smooth looking curve with the full system. Now, remember I said the weather wasn't good. We had changes here, changes there. So what do you do about that? If you've got 2 bikes in 2 different weather conditions and they're set up the same, if you get the same weather and you set the bikes up the same, then you should get what we call a gauge comparison. So we put Gixzilla up on the dyno as our gauge. We know Gixzilla has, like I said, over 1,000 dyno runs total. We know what kind of horsepower that bike made. And on the day that I did the testing, we put Gixzilla up here, and we put Mike's 2019 up here, and let me show you what we got. Now in our video series, Gixzilla, the best horsepower it had ever made, was 204. And we were able to match that 204. Now, the ZX-10 made 209. And the ZX-10 has a pretty nice gap on Gixzilla up here at the top. But look over here. Gixzilla is just really putting it to the ZX-10 all the way up the curve. Now, we're going to credit that to the variable intake cam on the Suzuki. That bike makes more torque than any non-supercharged 1000 that we've ever run. It makes it, quite frankly, very difficult to ride at the drag strip. But if you're road racing or you do roll-on racing or you need that bit of acceleration, that torque makes it an excellent bike to ride and makes it really quick. So what about horsepower? Gixzilla ran almost 163 miles an hour with 200 horsepower, where the ZX-10 makes 207. So in the land speed world, if we were going to go official land speed racing, and these bikes both weighed the same, had the same arrows, had the same rider and everything, the ZX-10 would be a really, really, really good choice there. Because that's where you stay when you're in land speed. I know when I ran my Hayabusa at Maxton, I was in 6th gear for 10 seconds, all just trying to creep up to the red line because it starts slowing down. And you can see not only does the ZX-10 make more horsepower, but it also is making more torque up top. In conclusion, what I say is the same. I sucked the gas out of Mike's ZX-10 after that 209 run and poured it in Gixzilla. Same day testing, apples to apples. When you drain the fuel from one bike to put into another so that you can test within the same time period on the same days, you know it's gotten a little out of control. It was the same as we know how to make it. So what did we learn? Hopefully that answered some questions for you, but the real question is, what are they going to do on the track? How fast are they in the real world? And we're going to answer that very, very soon. We're trying to get the ZX-10 to the track. Like I said, our last days coming up. We're running out of good days here in Ohio. So we're going to take the info we learned here. We're going to prep Mike's bike as close to Gixzilla as we can prep it. And we're going to get it down the racetrack and see where we're at, see what we need to do with gearing. The ZX-10 has really funny gearing, and I don't want to float off here, but I had to pull Gixzilla in 4th gear to make them comparative to Mike's bike in 5th, because the ZX-10 has a very close ratio transmission. So when it comes to gearing, Mike's not going to be able to go through the ZX-10 is not going to be able to go through in 4th like Gixzilla can. It's going to have to do that extra shift. Will it hurt it? Generally, you don't want to shift more, but the tranny's real close ratio, and we got a quick shifter. Whew. Too much talking. We're going to go to the racetrack and figure out exactly what's going on as soon as we can, and we're going to take you along with us. Until then, I'm Brock Davidson from Brock's Performance. We'll see you then.